Beautiful. Thank you for the kind intro, and thank you to the conference organizers. I am Dan Turchin, CEO of PeopleReign, the AI-first system of intelligence for IT and HR employee service. And I am really excited to be able to present to you a topic that is near and dear to my heart. This is kind of my life's work. It's my 7th company I've started in and around applying AI and machine learning to making work-life better for employees. And today's topic, AI model management, applying AI to IT and HR employee service, is something that we have been working on. We've been working to perfect it for at least the 25 years I've been in the space. And we're going to talk through, call this a lightning talk, a lot of content in a short amount of time. I'll try to make sure I leave a few minutes at the end for your questions. But with that said, let's jump in and have some fun. So I'll talk about some of these future of work trends and how they're influenced by AI. I'll talk about what we mean when we talk about managing AI models. I'll go through a case study of how AI is being applied to solve problems in and around employee service. We'll talk about a very important topic, the ethical implications for all of us who are vendors in the space and for all of us who will be the recipients of decisions made by automated models or automated AI-first platforms. I'll give some advice about what our customers are doing to lead their organization's AI initiatives. I'll give you a little glimpse into what's ahead as well. With that said, look no further than just about any headline, blog post, any website you go to, and you'll see our fearless leaders talking about the profound implications of AI. Here is Sundar Pichai saying the impact of AI on society will be more profound than fire or electricity. Fairly thought-provoking, as we all know. Elon Musk and Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg and just about every other leader has similarly strong opinions about the role of AI on society. I firmly believe, and this is a thought I share frequently, whether it's on my podcast, AI and the Future of Work, or elsewhere, what can be predicted is better left to machines, but what requires judgment or empathy is, and in the future will be better left to humans. So something to think about as we ponder things like, is the bot apocalypse upon us? I would claim no, the bot apocalypse is not upon us. We believe in a future where technology enables humans to be the best versions of themselves. In that future, technology is great, but people reign, like the reign of a king or queen. The name of our company is no coincidence. That's firmly what I believe. We look at a history of disruptive technologies, just about every decade, every century and every few decades, there comes along a technology that threatens to replace humans. And I would claim that across the arc of history, those who are on the right side of technological innovation end up winning in the end. And so whether you look at the printing press disrupting hand scribes, or the cotton gin disrupting hand loom weavers, or the automobile disrupting horses and buggies, or automated phone calls disrupting switchboard operators, or browsers disrupting the print publishing industry, I think we'd all agree that history tells a story of innovation being good, progress being good, and those who embrace technology end up being the ones who are best remembered as contributing the most to society. So here we are on the precipice of AI-driven automation, augmenting, not replacing the need for humans. And it's incumbent upon us as leaders to think about a vision of the future that's, look 5, 10, 15, 20 years out and think about how using data, using automated models, using smart technology can infuse a layer of intelligence across all of the things that make work mundane today. And that's the world that our kids are going to inherit, and that's a world that we should be excited about. It's not about replacing humans, it's about making humans the best versions of themselves. That's what we're going to talk about today. So what is AI, and why do AI models need to be managed? Well, this is about the most fundamental unpacking of AI imaginable. On the right there, I have a very simple model showing how data gets fed into models, which goes to automate tasks. The output of those tasks is learned automatically by AI models, which then goes to improve the accuracy of automated decisions. Again, we're stripping AI to its most bare essential components. On the left side, you see kind of the grandfather of all equations or relationships that describes how automated decisions get made. A gentleman named Thomas Bayes in the 18th century created this relationship, said, well, we can predict future outcomes if we know a little bit about relationships that underpin those future outcomes. And he related it this way. Take, for example, maybe, is my neighborhood likely to have a fire in the next year? And maybe the likelihood of fire is probably related to, let's say, moisture content. So Bayes' theorem would basically say, if I ask the question, if I have a hypothesis, is my neighborhood likely to experience a forest fire in the next 12 months? And I know the relationship between how often forest fires happen in my neighborhood and what the relationship is between moisture content and forest fires. I can then feed that into a very simple relationship model, and I can predict the likelihood of my neighborhood experiencing a forest fire with just a little bit of data and a little bit of a basic understanding of the relationship between the data and future outcomes. Well, applied at scale using model management, some of the principles we're going to talk about today, we can then make automated decisions that could be used to determine, let's say, where we station firefighters or what we invest in, let's say, increasing the moisture content in the ground. And we can use the principles of AI and machine learning, some data, to make some decisions that have profound impacts on people's life. Very simple example. We're going to talk about some others, but a good way to think about how automated management of data being fed into AI models with very simple algorithms can be used to have really significant impact on everything from the example I just gave to, let's say, the defense industry, looking at how to keep soldiers safer, education, how to better teach our kids, healthcare, how to reduce the likelihood of patient deaths, recidivism, easy for me to say, which criminals are likely to go back to prison. So every aspect of our lives is increasingly being influenced by automated decisions fed to humans to make to have a better impact on how we work and live. So today we're going to talk primarily about the intelligent enterprise and what it means to apply these principles of AI model management at work. And specifically, I'm going to walk you through kind of a history tour of the period that I've lived and how we then change our thinking about how to deliver smart service to employees in the context of IT and HR employee service. And I'll go through a little bit more depth in terms of a case study in the next couple of slides. But roll back the clock 15, 20 years, and we had this epiphany that you could improve the employee experience if you were to manage the life cycle of employee service requests like a business. So we said, wouldn't it be nice if you could apply the principles of service management to IT? And we got this nice acronym, ITSM. Subsequent to that, we said, well, maybe you could also apply those principles of service management to any domain within the enterprise. Maybe facilities management or HR or sales or legal. And we got this term ESM, enterprise service management. And we started to realize that so much of what employees need in the ordinary course of their work life is routine. And so what if we could apply a little bit of automation and do something like automatically figure out, when an approval is needed and route a request for approval? Or look, if someone wants to order something and it's within their budget threshold, just automatically approve it. So we introduced a little bit of automation, and we started to think next in terms of what if we could bring signals from the infrastructure into the service side of the business and make the service requests infrastructure aware. So maybe if someone was experiencing, let's say, a slowdown entering their time into the payroll app, we could introspect the infrastructure and realize that the payroll app, is running slowly, and we could automatically deploy some more compute resources or swap the page file. So at that point, this is kind of in the last 5 to 10 years, we realized that there's a lot of signals from the infrastructure that can mitigate the impact of service issues on employees. Well, now in the last few years, we've taken that a step further. And that's where we talk about automating the life cycle of these employee service requests with AI. And the beauty of applying AI to this problem is that we can solve problems that we don't know exist. And we can detect problems that haven't yet impacted employees. That's the beautiful thing. The previous version of automation relied on essentially deterministic workflows. So if you request something, I can check your budget threshold, and in real time, I can walk through a workflow and decide whether or not to approve your budget. But what if you ask me a question about brand new technology, or about a brand new policy, or about, let's say COVID policies, or things that are happening in real time where there's no defined workflow? That's where AI really adds value. And I'm going to talk through a few use cases that illustrate the real value of applying AI across the life cycle of a service request. So when I ask something like, I'm locked out of Office 365, I need to reset my password, AI can add value in two ways. One, it can let me ask that question using natural language. So I'm not constrained to know what Office 365 is called, or that it's called a password. It's not identity management. I just ask it using natural language, and AI is sophisticated enough to introspect the context and come back with an answer. The other nice thing about using AI to solve a problem like this is the problem may not be as simple as I need a password reset. Oftentimes, the reason about a third of ticket volume and for a typical enterprise help desk is related to identity management. And the reason that's the case is because, look, I tried to reset my password and I couldn't. And maybe the reason I couldn't is because I'm not allowed to access the application, or the application is down right now, or I'm locked out because of too many incorrect attempts. It's something like that. Obviously, the first thing I tried was to reset it on my own. I need to upgrade Mac the antivirus. So relatively simple question to ask, but wouldn't it be nice if AI was able to guide me through this process of running diagnostics and helping me interactively upgrade McAfee on my MacBook? What's our work from home reimbursement policy? Seems like a simple question, but the right answer might depend on what country I'm in, what role I'm in. Maybe it's a function of it's going to change in the next few weeks, and maybe the best answer is going to be different a week from now. Maybe it requires some kind of form I need to fill out. There's always context, and if you think of what the best human would do if I were to ask that question, increasingly that's what you're going to find AI is going to be able to do. How do I order a rapid COVID home test? Again, there's some nuance there. So it's really important for AI models to be trained on a lot of information that relates to that topic, so it can provide some context based on all the kinds of variables that I shared. So from the perspective of the technology, so now as technologists, let's take a look at what we need to do to be able to deliver an AI-first automated solution to be able to answer some of these questions that, as you might have seen so far, can be a little bit trickier than what they might seem like at face value. So we can talk about the life cycle of an employee service request. And as we orbit around this life cycle, what it means to infuse intelligence into every aspect of it. So first, the request process. So let's say I come in via a voice portal, or maybe it's an interactive chat portal. Maybe it's Microsoft Teams or Slack or something like that. I want to be able to express my request in natural language and have AI use NLP, natural language processing, to automatically introspect the context and come back with a reasonable question if it requires clarification, or set of next best actions. Diagnostics. So once the AI models have been able to detect the intent based on the question that I asked correctly, then it's incumbent on AI to be able to drill into the context and interactively diagnose the issue. I mentioned this in the context of upgrade the security settings on my Mac. Well, first, let's see what version you're on. And let's see, if there's been a breach recently. And let's see if you have McAfee installed or not. Let's see what version of Mac you're running. All of these things go into figuring out the most efficient way to automate the resolution of your request. We then go into the resolution phase. And the beauty of applying AI and machine learning to this problem is that we essentially have a digital brain that consists of the sum total of all of the ways that MacBooks have been upgraded to the latest version of McAfee over the past decade. And if you could amass maybe 100 million different instances, you could envision a system that is much more capable, than the smartest live agent who picks up the phone and tries to solve a trouble ticket for you, on a phone call. That ability to orchestrate and resolve the issues using AI based on a smart understanding of all of the contextually relevant examples, that's an example of, going back a few slides, this is really Bayes' theorem at scale. It's building a model based on some historical data to be able to make predictions, to be able to resolve issues that haven't yet occurred. Learning, this is a really important component of the process. So almost like the very smartest human would do, AI models are able to take what's been done, ask for feedback from the employee. Hey, did this get it right? Were we able to successfully get your COVID home test or upgrade the McAfee settings on your MacBook? If the answer is yes, great. We're going to take that as a positive case and we're going to iterate. We're going to upweight that answer in the future for similar issues because we were just informed that was correct. There are also implicit signals. So that would be explicit when the employee actually gives it an active thumbs up, but implicitly we can learn a lot about the resolution as well. How long did it take for the issue to be resolved? Did we in fact see that MacBook came back online? When we issued, let's say, a password reset to unlock an account, did that user in fact successfully log in subsequently after the reset was done automatically? So all of these implicit signals also get fed into these models so that they continuously learn. And as you go around this flywheel, the next time, it's going to be an even better experience and the AI models are going to improve. So that's one quick case study of how a very simple routine request for employee service, whether it's IT, policies, HR, document requests, et cetera, can be significantly improved using these principles of AI and machine learning, which all have as their underpinning a foundation of data, usually unstructured data that lives in trouble tickets or emails or knowledge articles, but fed into kind of an NLP aware, an AI aware, a contextually relevant model that can solve these routine problems very effectively. So how does this get operationalized? Well, this is a diagram of the 4 R's that we think about in terms of AI-driven automation applied to employee service. R number 1, the request process. So use NLP and NLU to automate the process of having the dialogue with the employee. Route the request. So if the virtual agent isn't sufficient, create all of the kind of the hygiene around the ticket so that it gets to best queue the first time. In the resolution phase, it's incumbent upon the AI first system of intelligence to tell the live agent what's the set of next best actions to take. And in fact, in the screenshots below, you see examples of this, live examples showing what it looks like in that third screenshot, for example, to actually embed the right answer in the context of the trouble ticket that AI created in the first place. And lastly, restore. So the restoration phase is really important. And that's where the live agent has the answer. They're able to either push out an orchestration task to automate the process of resolving the issue, or in some cases, push out an answer, a knowledge article or something like that. But in every case, it's really important for the learning aspect to make sure that the problem was assisted by AI and that the AI model gets fed what the best answer was before the next related issue comes into the queue. So requests, routing, resolution, and restoration, 4 phases that are required to automate the full life cycle of an employee service request, whether it's IT, HR, or another domain. So moving on, a very important topic for us to talk about as technologists who are thinking about how to commercialize or operationalize these AI models at scale is this a good candidate for automated decision making? We first need to get comfortable asking that question. So the principles of responsible AI are what I have here on the left. The key questions that we need to ask are things like, how was data used to train the model? How was it collected? Was there inherent bias in the data? Was it collected from a representative sample of the population? Who developed the algorithms? Do the people who develop the algorithms have a good understanding of how they work? Did we think about the quality or the hygiene of the data before we started making decisions? I gave some examples earlier. Who goes to prison and for how long? whether or not your loan is approved, how your kids are taught in schools. All of these decisions are increasingly being either assisted or made via automation based on data that sometimes you've inadvertently volunteered. So it's really important for us as vendors, as consumers, to understand the implications of our data being used to make decisions that really impact our lives or the lives of our loved ones. How will automated decisions manage, or how do we measure the accuracy of those decisions? The last question I say is the most important. And this is something that, whether it's on my podcast or when I'm coaching leaders, I encourage everyone to ask before deploying any AI or machine learning models operationally. What could go wrong if poor decisions are made? Sometimes the implications may be minor. For example, which movies Netflix recommends to me, or which stories show up in my Facebook feed, or which products Amazon recommends I buy. Now, I would argue there are actually some significant ethical implications within those three examples, but those might have less, call it societal or less impact on our lives than whether or not you can get a loan, or how many police should be on this block versus the next one to reduce crime. The three principles that underlie all these 5 key questions are on the left-hand side. So responsible AI, and as vendors, we should make a habit of only practicing responsible AI, needs to adhere to these 3 principles. Is it transparent? So it's really important when, for you or I, decisions are made on our behalf in an automated fashion, we need to know when those decisions were made and what technology was used to make them. Transparency. Predictable. It's very important that the same inputs generate the same outputs. So when we talk about the integrity of models, we want the accuracy to improve over time, but they should be reliable, predictable, in the sense that a certain set of inputs should reliably generate a certain set of outputs. A lot of times we refer to this as explainability. So we don't like black box AI. We like to be able to introspect the models, understand the data, understand the algorithms, so that we can unpack how the decision was made if need be. And then lastly, if we unpack the automated decision, we discover that we're not happy with the accuracy or with the process or with the data, we need to be able to configure how those models are used. And that could be everything from using a different algorithm to perhaps changing the hyperparameters in the algorithm that were used to train the model. It could be as simple as replacing biased data with data that has been more thoroughly vetted. But it's really important that in order to deploy AI models or deploy automated decision technology that embeds automated decisions responsibly, we think about transparency, predictability, and configurability before we make automated decisions that could have dramatic ramifications on people's lives. So I said I'd share with you some actionable tips for your own organization. So 3 recommendations that I have, things that you can do to go back today and be a champion for an AI-driven project in your own organization. Think about data preparation. Where do you get your data? What's the hygiene of your data? Does it need to be cleaned up prior to using it for an AI-first initiative? Think about your success metrics. So let's think less about the technology, less about how the algorithms work, and more about how you're going to measure the impact of your project. In the case of internal employee service, we think about reducing the call volume, reducing the mean time to resolve issues, reducing your cost per ticket, increasing the adoption of self-service, increasing the overall value of the employee or the quality of the employee experience. Adoption, think about when you deploy your initiative, let's say it's an internal project, how are you going to increase adoption? So oftentimes, if you're looking for employees to, let's say, switch from a voice channel where they call a live agent to using, let's say, an automated virtual agent via interactive chat, you need to think through how you're going to accelerate the adoption of that behavior. So think about, maybe start with live agents first. It's very unobtrusive from a process perspective, but it will quickly lead to a better employee experience. Make sure you're capturing the feedback so that you can feed that learning into subsequent versions or phases of your project. Create a leaderboard. make everybody that's using your solution a hero. So make it clear that when they do behaviors that improve the employee experience, they get rewarded and acknowledged. Be willing to sunset legacy channels. So if the phone channel is your most expensive channel, be willing to say that within the next 3 months, we're going to sunset phone as an option, and you'll have an automated voice channel or you'll have automated chat, but we're going to improve the user experience by replacing some of the most inefficient channels with more efficient channels. And lastly, publish metrics. Make it clear how the user experience is improving, how the mean time to resolve an issue is going down, how the organization and your customers are benefiting through the application of some of these new technologies in support of something like employee service or in support of better employee or customer experiences. So those are some actionable tips. Before we wrap up, I thought I'd share with you 3 good reads. If you're passionate about this topic like I am, 3 good places to go next. Homo Deus, Yuval Noah Harari, very popular author. This is actually more accessible of a read than you might think based on the title, A Brief History of Tomorrow. Kai-Fu Lee, one of our heroes, a venture capitalist and someone who's very well respected in Silicon Valley. A couple years ago wrote AI Superpowers, good perspective on the geopolitics of AI. And then Max, who's a professor at MIT, wrote this, call it a fictional narrative about Life 3.0, life with AI, where intelligence is ambient across our life experience. Really good read from Max Tegmark. I'm going to close with another of my favorite quotes. I firmly believe that the pace of innovation has never been faster than it was yesterday, and it will never be slower than it is today. And if you take nothing away from this conversation except an appreciation for the pace of innovation and the role that you can have in influencing the lives of your colleagues, your family, yourself, using technology to be the best version of human being that you can be, then I think you're in a position to go out and truly be a champion of innovation and be one of the ones who I talked about, at the top of this discussion, who embraces innovation, embraces technology to be on the right side of this next chapter that we're all writing together. So I couldn't be more enthusiastic about what's ahead. I hope after this lightning talk, you are as well, and you know a little bit more about what it means to manage the life cycle of AI models, use data to make automated decisions, and certainly, like the context that we talked about today, how to improve employee experiences using AI, the principles of AI and machine learning to automate the life cycle or automate the resolution of employee service requests. If you want to hear more of these kinds of topics, I'd encourage you, go out and listen to the podcast. I mentioned we've published about 115 episodes. Get it wherever you listen to podcasts. It's called AI and the Future of Work. And if you have suggestions for guests or topics that you think would be good for us to cover on upcoming episodes, I'm all ears. That's my contact information. With that said, if the organizers will let me, I'm happy to take a question or two. And I will again thank you for your time.